Hey everybody, John here for Azeroth Roundtable episode, I don't know, because that's something we look up. To the second episode. 221? This is the second Blizzcon on the road episode that we're doing. We're in the car, we're heading home. I am being joined by your normal, all-the-time host, and now the driving host with the most, Ben Bumhover. Ben, hello.
Hey, John, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I am kind of sleepy, so hopefully this means that this will keep me awake and I won't kill us both.
It's important. As the driver, you should be awake. Ben, let's get right into it. Let's talk about BlizzCon, the elephant in the room that everybody's talking about. Let's start off with, how was your BlizzCon?
BlizzCon was pretty good, actually. I had a lot of fun seeing tons of people. I had, I guess I'm just going to say a lot of fun for everything, but I was able to see a couple panels, play a couple demos, but I haven't been able to get into a super deep dive into all the different stuff that I wanted to see because it's BlizzCon, and if you're actually there, you kind of don't do that.
Yeah, I found... So here's my new philosophy for BlizzCon. It used to be very much like, oh, I want to go there and I want to try the new things and I need to just try the new shiny. And that was what it was always about for me. And between kind of realizing it on my own and talking to some people, I've learned that it's now, you gotta go for the people. Even if you're ignoring panels and stores and all that good stuff, the virtual tickets there waiting for you when you get home, the game demos these days, you're going to be playing the new content that was at BlizzCon, usually within a couple months of them showing it here. So the thing that you have to wait the longest for is seeing the people again, and so for me that was both the highlight and the primary focus this trip.
Oh, I didn't realize you put the microphone by my mouth because I'm driving. Yeah, and the thing is I'm really looking forward to using that virtual ticket and going home and, watching the big important things that I missed. But, overall, I gotta say, I love the fact that there is more room and there's another hall and everything. But, John, there are way too many people now.
There's a lot of people there. It's really, really hard to do much of anything. There's a lot of people, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's growing and everything, and I'm fine with that, but finding the right number of people per, for the space that they have and everything, it's a juggle act, and this is the first time that we had the new hall and all that, and, our feedback matters.
Yeah, I think the problem is the extra hall does allow for more people to be there, but that doesn't take into account that, okay, all those people are going to want to be in that hall all the time, which was a bit of a problem. And also, the other issue that I noticed is, so typically if you want to get on the demo units, you will do that, if you care about that more than the concert, for example. The concert's a great time to do that. This year, from everything I heard, that was not the case, because it seems like with how packed that hall was, they filled up the concert space, and then everybody that was still left said, "Okay, let's go to the floor then, and let's do that."
You know what? I could not confirm that because during the concert I was out to dinner with a bunch of friends.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I don't know. But that is what I heard. That's what I heard.
And the thing is, I would totally believe that, just because seeing the amount of people that were trying to get into the main hall just for the opening ceremonies and everything like that. It's always busy there, but then there was a lot of spillover into a lot of the other stages too. So if everybody wants to go to that main stage, they have to block it off at some point.
Yeah, so there's a reason that we're kind of hinting at this issue of, hey, we haven't gotten to see everything. We spent most of our time hanging out with people, talking to people, socializing around the con, and that is, as we kind of talk about what we saw, what we heard, it's going to be very incomplete. This is mostly going to be about, hey, here's how we spent our Blizzcon, and in the coming weeks we'll talk a lot more about Battle for Azeroth and all the details coming out about that, and we might touch on that a little bit here, but if you hear something and you say, but guys, they said that on the panel, there's a good chance we haven't seen that panel yet. We'll get there, we'll make our way to it, and we'll let you know how we feel, but for right now, this is just kind of talking about the BlizzCon experience and all of that. But let's talk about Battle for Azeroth, because Ben, that trailer.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we had this great cinematic that if you had asked me a year ago, oh, are they going to have the cinematic for the next expansion at the next BlizzCon? I would have said, no way. Like, even if they announce it and everything, it is so rare to get, some sort of really cool cinematic, like, right away. For Legion, we had the Gul'dan trying to get the Illidan one, but that wasn't the opening cinematic. They saved that for BlizzCon, which was really cool. But this, they, go through the whole, like, oh, here's all the new stuff that's coming and everything. They drop that cinematic, and, I think it showed everything that you need to know about story-wise going into that expansion, like what the overall arcing theme and everything is going to be. And the only time that I've ever felt more faction pride was maybe the Wrathgate cinematic, but even then, this was just absolutely amazing seeing, my war chief jumping into the fray and, like, turning the tide of battle, like, single-handedly. That was something that just blew my mind.
So I have some concerns about that. You mentioned faction pride, and that, to me, as I go to try to learn more and look into what's coming in the future, that's going to be one of the key issues for me, because one of the problems I have with Horde versus Alliance stories is you always have to make one faction the bad guy. It's very, very hard to tell a neutral Horde versus Alliance story. Somebody has to be the catalyst, and they're always going to look like the bad guys. And so we heard about two things. We heard that the Horde was going to burn down Tedrasil, I think it is the name of the world tree.
Because Nordrasil is the one that's in Hyjal, right?
Yeah, I think so. That could be wrong. We don't have maps or resources right now. We just have a car.
And we're not Night Elves.
I can tell you we're going past Washington Street. I can speak to that with some authority, but I cannot tell you for sure that it's Teldrassil. But anyway, we know the Horde's going to burn that down, and we know that the Alliance is going to sack Lordaeron, which also includes the Undercity. What we have learned since is that the burning of Teldrassil is the first event in those two events. What concerns me about that is that was actually one of Garrosh's goals when he was war chief, was he wanted Kalimdor completely for the Horde, and he actually, I believe in that story, had planned to send ships to completely surround it, and he was going to bombard it, I think, was the plan. Again, could be off a little bit on those details. So how they're going to take Sylvanas into that same position and tell that story without me now suddenly looking at her the same exact way I looked at Garrosh is going to be some tricky storytelling that I hope they do, because what I've always found so compelling about Horde versus Alliance is that no matter what we actually say about each other, the reality is we all kind of operate in this gray area, and there was no good and there was no bad, and it was kind of just different perspectives on how to handle things and how to, live in this world.
Exactly. And something that we've been saying for the past couple of expansions is Draenor, oh, it's just Burning Crusade again. Or Legion, oh, it's just Burning Crusade again. Because, we're dealing with a lot of the similar things, like, going back to essentially, I can't even think Outland. But, instead it's Draenor. And, dealing with the Legion the entire time. And, just like we did with Burning Crusade. I don't want to go back to Pandaria where, the end raid is going to be, we're taking down Sylvanas because she's doing horrible war crimes. I don't want a repeat of that story. It was great, and I loved it for what it was. Hold on, I'm changing lanes.
This is important.
Okay, it was great, and I loved it for what it was then, but I've already done that. I don't think that... I mean, we lost Thrall as our leader. We lost Vol'jin as our leader. We lost Garrosh as our leader. But, I mean, that's fine, but still, we still did. I don't want to automatically be like, okay, well, Sylvanas is, like, just, you know, let's watch the world burn, and we have to take her out, too. It's something that I'm not interested in. But even more so, she's always been such a complex character. If you play mostly Alliance and you just look at her as, oh, well, she's got the plague, she's got this, she's a bad character. There are so many, like, facets about her that just turning her bad is something that is completely uninteresting and essentially just ruins her character.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of another, hey, the Horde's got another evil leader that we gotta go and overthrow in the long line of leaders that we either need to overthrow or are going to get replaced. Like, I'm not interested in the Horde leadership role becoming the defense against the dark arts teacher in the Warcraft universe. So, I mean, I think that needs to be handled deftly. I hope they do. I certainly don't want them to make the Alliance the bad guys, just to kind of flip it and be like, hey, Alliance, I'm not saying that I want them to be the bad guys either, but to me, there's a natural, logical story element to if the Alliance were to attack Lordaeron first. I understand the reasoning for a human-led faction to look at the remains of a human city and say, that should belong to us, versus something where they're burning the trees of the Night Elves for some reason.
Yeah, and even more so, like, with what happened at the Broken Shore, where the Alliance is under the assumption that the Horde betrayed them, even though, just like a conversation could, kind of fix that. Of course, Gen's kind of, one note Gen on that. Just watching the cinematic and seeing Gen, kind of leading the charge, even though Anduin's there with him, and like the trepidation and the concern that Anduin has over the entire thing, it makes it seem like it's more likely that Gen kind of convinced Anduin and everybody that they actually need to attack the Undercity or Lordaeron. That kind of makes sense to me. Like you said, let's just burn down Teldrassil, because, I mean, there's got to be some sort of story thing in there, and I'm guessing that maybe that'll be part of the 8.0 patch that we get. But I don't know, it doesn't seem right that all of a sudden we would just go and attack a tree.
Yeah, I'm not feeling it yet. I'm sure they will do a good job with the storytelling. I'm sure they're not going to just rehash Garrosh, but right now I would say probably that's the number one concern in my mind. That said, getting to my thoughts on the cinematic, it made me say two things out loud that I didn't intend to necessarily, which was Sylvanas does her little thing, she's shooting the arrows, she's running around, and then all of a sudden she goes into crazy awesome Banshee mode, and I just said, holy shit. It just came out of me like that, and wasn't me like, I'm gonna swear at this point, like, my jaw just dropped, and that is the words that came out of my mouth. And then she does her big rallying for the Horde yell, and I yelled it. And a lot of people in that auditorium yelled it as well, because it's just such a powerful faction moment. Like you said, I felt so much faction pride in that moment.
Yeah, and I mean, when she yelled for the Horde, a lot of people around me did. I felt myself just compelled to just do it. It's like, it's almost like it's just a response we have at this point. Like, that's all it is.
Yeah, it really is, but I mean, it was a pretty strong for the Horde. Like, it was just, you watch the most badass thing, and then they're yelling it, and you're just like, oh, we're getting it done. We're getting it done. Like, it was, and I haven't been able to take a real strong temperature on a lot of people to see how they feel about Sylvanas as war chief. I'm too big of a fanboy to really care that much. I'm like a pig in mud. I'm feeling pretty good about it. So I don't know if there are Horde people that need to be sold on her, like the Alliance kind of needed to be sold on Anduin, which, by the way, I think they super did. I mean, we always like to make the joke that the Horde liked Anduin more than the Alliance did. And so even as a dirty Hordey, like, seeing Anduin, like, first off, he looked friggin' awesome. That armor was super cool. And then him going out there and doing his thing was pretty badass as well.
I mean, one of the things that I absolutely loved about the cinematic is that you see the leaders actually getting into the fray, getting into the fight. And that's something that I've always liked about, just different storytelling from, like, medieval stuff and fantasy and everything like that. Because they're the right kind of leader who, they're not just sitting back at the sidelines, doing everything. So seeing Anduin actually in there showed that he's grown a lot. And even though, ultimately he turned into, okay, well, you know what? I've got to do my path the way that I know it and be a priest. It was just really neat seeing him still there on the front lines, being a part of everything that was going on. Because a lot of the time, like, back in Pandaria, he was on the sidelines. You kind of quest with him for a little bit. He was hanging out with Wrathion for a whole bunch. The War Crimes book kind of revolves around him a whole lot. But again, he's still not that huge of a key player. But with this cinematic, and I mean the one that we had on the Broken Shore where he gets his father's sword and everything, that kind of shows you, where he's heading and everything in the first place. It's neat to see him in there, and seeing Gen in there, like possibly really the one who's leading the fight, who knows, and just being awesome. And then just the fury of the light that Anduin releases was, I mean, it's great. Everybody knows he's hacking though, because he's doing a mass res in combat, but still, it was really cool.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think the way they captured the complex emotions of the characters was super effective. I've heard a lot of people talking about Anduin's, and I just want to say, like, they're absolutely there. I mean, you and I sat in on the live instance panel, and Scott went very, very deep on that. But I think even with Sylvanas, we saw it. Because prior to her going full Banshee mode, you see her looking at the Horde, and it's a Horde that's losing this fight. And not only that, but they don't even really seem like they want to be fighting. They just kind of seem lethargic and like, oh, we're just losing, and they just blew up more of us. Whatever, who cares? And you can see in her eyes her coming to terms with, I need to be an inspiration to these people. I can't just be the war chief that's sitting up on the wall telling them what to do. They need to be the Horde. They need to remember what it's like to be the Horde. And that's the moment, and you see it all on her face, where she jumps out and does her attack and all of that. And you can see it on their faces when they watch her, this, oh my gosh, our war chief is out there fighting and battling the Alliance on her own. Look at how good this is. And then she does the rallying cry, and you see all of them get into it too. It's amazing storytelling without really any dialogue beyond for the Horde.
Yeah, and just how everything was put together, and I mean, it's essentially like Helm's Deep for WoW. There's two forces just going at it. The quality of the animation itself was great. The feel of the story, the impact of everything, and just like how emotional you get from watching, heroes that you've loved into the fray, die, maybe be rezzed, maybe not. I mean, there's so much going on in that cinematic that, I mean, I saw it on the big screen. I kind of watched a bit of it like on my phone. I'm waiting to get home so I can watch it again and just really scrutinize it more.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, even like, you look at that friggin' last shot, or the, near the last shot, where Sylvanas looks at Anduin after he's rezzed the troops, and she doesn't look like, oh, I'm so ready to kill the Alliance. Like, she actually looks at him with, like, this element of pride, like, man, look at you, you're doing it. Like, she actually seems proud of him, which is a really strange emotion for, we're going to war, we're all gonna try to kill each other, but man, look at your leader, he's doing a great job, isn't he?
Yeah, and, you know, that's one of those facets of Sylvanas. You know, she respects, like, strength and not exactly power, but, I mean, she's been the leader of her people for so long and knows what it actually entails. So being able to see that on your opponent and knowing that he will fight for the ones who follow him and, you know, just really have that pride and stuff, I think says a lot. But even more so, like, after working with Varian on the Broken Shore and all that, I think that's, you know, she sees a lot of his father in Anduin as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of Alliance players are going to say, well, then she shouldn't have abandoned him, but I think Sylvanas developed a really strong, like, respect for Varian, and I think she actually, like, did, you know, like him to a degree, and at least as far as she could, given, you know, their roles in the world and all of that. And I think that smile was not just like, oh, you're going to be a formidable opponent, which I think is a part of it, but I also think there was an element of, like, your father would be proud in there.
Yeah, it only makes sense. I mean, for so long, he's been living in his father's shadow. Like, it took Varian to, you know, turn into little bits of green in order for him to be able to really step out of it. And, like, it's kind of a bummer, but at the same time, Anduin is who he is, and he's realizing that, and by the end of the cinematic, he definitely understands it. Something that, you know, I think Taryn said it, or maybe I was talking to Maui about it, but it's like when he puts down his sword, he doesn't throw it away. He's not getting rid of it. He's not saying, like, you know, I'm not a warrior or anything like that. He sets it aside and does what he knows best, and does what he knows he should be doing. And again, just the complexity of that, seeing his face and everything, it was all just incredibly powerful.
Also, now I'm totally ready for Anduin to be in Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah, and he'll have a mass res, and then everybody will call that hacks.
It's true. It's going to be way too powerful of an ultimate. Okay, so he needs to develop his kit a little bit before I'm ready for him to be in Heroes, but man, that armor was super cool.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually, at first I'm like, okay, is it Anduin, or is it someone who's like a proxy, or is it someone, quote-unquote, pretending to be Anduin to, you know, command the fights? Because at that point, we're not entirely sure who's in the lead. And I still really feel like Gen is the one who's kind of pulling the strings on this and pushing him to do things that he doesn't want to do.
And it makes sense from a lore perspective, too, because not only did Sylvanas kill Gen's son, but she also, you know, attacked his city. Granted, it was under Garrosh's orders. She did disobey the orders on how to fight that war, and she did some things that were really not good to Gilneas. Again, I think I think that becomes a very hard thing to justify, but this is what I mean when I say they have to do really well by the story that they tell. Because when I talk about the poisoning of Gilneas with the plague, you know, on its surface value, you go, oh, that's horrible. She was told not to use it, and then she used it. Like, clear cut, Sylvanas is bad. That's the end of the story. Seems like the surface level story. But like a lot of things with Sylvanas, there's this underlying layer, which is she was told she had to go to war with Gilneas, which she didn't want to do. And in Sylvanas' mind, every time an undead soldier dies, she never gets that soldier back. They're dead forever. There's no second army coming. There's no generation growing up. There's no little Anduin who's going to step up and be a real amazing hero for the undead. They have a finite number, and every time you cross one of those off, it's forever. And so she did she did it by the means that would save the highest number of her troops, which makes perfect sense for her character, because her character has always been shown that I need to value the existence of the Forsaken. I take care of them. They rely on me. I need to do everything in my power to ensure we have a future and we get to survive, and that there's not going to be some day where there's only 500 of us and our enemies look at us and say, oh, we could wipe them out easily. Let's do it.
Exactly. And like, it actually seems like that's kind of what Garrosh was going for, because you know how he was about the whole, like, oh, you know, pure race and all that stuff. I mean, he was essentially sending them as fodder to get rid of them. You know, there's nothing else that he did. He didn't send in a Tauren to help. He definitely didn't send in any orcs to help. And, you know, the Blood Elves were busy kind of doing their own thing, like talking to the Alliance to potentially switch over to the Alliance side.
Yeah, and so that's the kind of storytelling I'm hoping for. Even if on a surface level it seems like, oh, the Horde are bad again, if they can give us a good reason for it and really justify what's going on here, I'll be 100% on board. I get tired of feeling like the bad guys, and I feel like it's so easy for them to label the Horde the bad guys that sometimes it's a bit too much of a crutch, because it's like, oh, they've been legitimately actual bad guys in the past. We can do it for them again, and that'll be no big deal.
Yeah, and especially at I'm not entirely sure if it was actually the opening ceremonies or if it was actually the first What's New in Warcraft, but they specifically said, yeah, the Horde are just looking for a home, and then they're like, oh, and by the way, they destroyed it. You know, they're burning down Teldrassil, but we're just looking for a home.
Yeah, we just want a home. Also, we really hate this giant tree. Like, turns out we don't like it. I do think it's cool that they have more or less, like, halved the map, and they've said, okay, Kalimdor is Horde, Eastern Kingdoms is Alliance, as much as I am sad to see, although I wonder what that means for Silvermoon.
Yeah, that's one of the first things that I thought of. It's like, well, they're kind of up there on their own, but even more so, and this is me thinking in mage terms, what's going to happen to my Undercity teleport and, like, the portal spell? Like, are they still going to work? Am I going to, if I actually use it, am I going to port into an Alliance, like, thing where guards are going to start attacking and kill me?
I don't know, it's going to be interesting. They did say that, like, this is going to be a max level thing, because they felt that you're not going to appreciate what the burning of Teldrassil means unless you got to experience it before it was burned down. So you're still going to be making a character there at the early level. You're still going to be questing there and going around, it sounds like, or at least probably. Who knows where they'll ultimately land. But it sounds like they want these zones to still exist in some form so that you can appreciate what's going to ultimately happen to them. But yeah, it certainly leaves a lot of questions of, okay, what happens to Silvermoon and what happens to the Undercity?
Yeah, and even more so, where am I going to trick-or-treat?
I don't know, man. That's super important.
So does this also mean that they're just going to move the Exodar?
Yeah, pack that thing up and get that out of here. I don't want the Exodar around. You know what? It probably just belongs to the Horde at this point, seeing as I spent so much time in the friggin' thing this last expansion.
Yeah, pretty much. So, okay, let me ask you this. I mean, we talked about the cinematic. That's the big, old, huge thing. And, I mean, one of the... hold on one second. I need to pass this truck. Okay, so one of the other big, huge announcements is something that's... a lot of people have been screaming for a long time. There have been illegal activities that are doing this. And that is the other kind of cinematic, if you will, that we got of all the cinematics going in reverse until all of a sudden it's just World of Warcraft Classic. I mean, John, what does this mean? What do you think it means to the actual current content in WoW and the current player base? And what are you going to do about it?
Okay, so this is going to be the go ahead and mark it on your calendar your log, whatever. This is going to be John's salty moment of the day. To me, what this announcement was them saying, hey, we're going to justify being able to take legal action on all the people doing classic servers, and we're going to state an intention so that people will also stop asking us about it, but who knows when and how. And also, whenever we do reach that point where they do figure it out and they do execute on it, the truth is, I don't care. Like, I'm gonna play on it, so let me get out ahead of us, in however many years or whatever where we're playing on it. Let me get out ahead of people saying, John said he thought it was not interesting, why is he playing on it? I'll check it out, sure, but I am not one of those people that is nostalgic for Classic WoW. I think Classic WoW was very awesome at the time. I think it was amazing. I think it was revolutionary. I do occasionally, have those thoughts of, oh man, it was so neat back in the day because XYZ, but I am in zero rush to go back to those days. I like the progress we've made. I like what we've evolved into. I think Legion is one of the best expansions they've ever done, and that's one of the most recent ones. So, I mean, to me, there's been progress, and I've enjoyed it, and I just have zero interest in classic servers. That said, I am not at any point ever going to say it shouldn't exist, because there are clearly people that are passionate about it and want it, and I think it's so cool that you guys are going to eventually get this thing done properly, supported by Blizz in a manner where you don't have to worry anymore. Oh, is Blizzard going to shut this down? Like, I can't imagine being a part of something super cool and having to worry every single day that Blizzard would come knocking and put an end to it. So I'm super excited for you guys and girls out there that are way looking forward to this. I think it's very, very cool. I think it's an awesome addition for you guys. As far as me, though, I feel like they said very little about it, because I feel like, unlike a lot of their announcements, this was a statement of intent more than a coming soon. And so I don't think there's a lot of substance there. And then on a personal level, it's just not going to be for me.
Yeah, I when they announced that, I actually did a tweet that, I thought it was funny, but I really believe it. So we're sitting here with Battle for Azeroth coming out, and one of the huge, big announcements for that, which I am incredibly grateful for and think is great, is the fact that they're changing the level scaling to be for like all of Old World, also for Outland, for Northrend, everywhere. So you have more choice, more variety. You can finish, an entire storyline and all that stuff. And I think that that's one of the greatest additions to World of Warcraft. It's great. Meanwhile, the people on the WoW Classic server, or servers, however many there's going to be, they don't have any of that stuff. They don't have new quests, new questing, or anything along those lines that has, made questing, in my opinion, more engaging and more fun. There's a lot less story. They're going to have a whole lot of different, oh, hey, go get the Zephyr Hoof. Go get 20 of them. And, you have to kill 80 of them in order to get the 20 that you need. So it's just one of those things where I'm happy with all the quality of life improvements. I think that a lot of people who have been wanting Classic WoW aren't the ones who have been playing on private servers, who don't really either remember what Classic WoW was like, or they have such rose-colored glasses that they think that it was harder or it's better and this is the way that it should be all the time, and don't get how much of a slog a lot of it was. It would be like if you went back and played original EverQuest right now. Now, at the time, it was great, and a lot of people loved it, and that was the game to play. But going from, a entirely story-based, quest-based system and everything like that to just, okay, well, let's go and just kill stuff. That's how you level. doesn't seem like a lot of fun to me. There's so much more that has come to World of Warcraft than just, oh, remember how the expansions were, or how it was so hard to get gold, or things like that. That it's going to be a rude wake-up call to some people who've been screaming for this for so long. Like, the talent trees alone are going to be a huge thing. It's just, there's so many differences that have happened. And I mean, I didn't go to the deep dive, so I don't know exactly what they're planning on it. But like, why would they ever iterate and expand upon what they have if they just put the last build that was there before, Burning Crusade came out? That's essentially what people are looking for.
Yeah, and I mean, if people want to do that, again, I think more power to them. But I just think that, it's not for me. I think it'll find an audience.
Well, and I agree with you. I'm happy that they're getting what they want. This is what a lot of people have been asking for. Hence one of the reasons why Blizzard is doing it. And again, play what you want. It's your money. It's however you want to do it. And, I'm happy for anybody who gets on there and really sits back and thinks, hey, this is the way that WoW should be. This is the way that it is. I'm happy to be playing this again. Good for you, and I'm happy for you. But I agree with you, John. It does not appeal to me at all.
So, let me ask you, there was one more big trailer during the WoW bit. Let's maybe talk about that, and then maybe we can call it for now, and then we'll do some deep dives into this stuff a little bit later. But let's talk about the overall features for this new expansion, at least from what they've teased in the video. Because again, a lot of this stuff they've gotten into a lot deeper in panels and things like that. Some of which I've read summaries of, some of which I've seen, some of which I've had people talk to me about. But from kind of just a general overview, what are you thinking about the feature set of this expansion? Does it have you excited, concerned, or what?
Because of the way that they're actually doing the leveling differently, I'm really excited about that bit. So, Horde level up in their own entire place. Alliance level up in their own place. And, there is nothing that screams, hey, level up your Alliance player before this expansion comes out, then you're only getting definitely half of the story. Because, previously we've all gone to the same continent or whatever, and we've gone through and done pretty much all the same quests except for little bits that kind of pair off and have, just either a Horde focus or an Alliance focus. These are 3 entire different zones that you get very little story content in until you're max level, and even then you're kind of probing and building up kind of bases. You don't really get to engage in the different zones like you have been in the past. So for that, I'm really excited and I'm really curious about. The allied races, that's something that I think is really cool, because it's not exactly technically adding sub races it was leaked on Wowhead. It's just different looks to a lot of them. But if I remember correctly from just kind of the little murmurings that I've heard, they have their own what do you call it? They have their own race special abilities and everything like that.
Yeah, they have their own racial abilities.
Yeah, I couldn't think of the word right now. Maybe because I'm tired and driving. I don't know. But I like the idea that the Horde gets the Nightfall, and I don't know exactly why they're going with us, but hey, that's cool.
So it's interesting. I actually have an answer to this without it, not even from the panels themselves, but in kind of looking into when I heard the preview of sub races, I did a little research into, I wonder who would go where and what and why and all of that. And so I saw it, and it looks like when Alliance and Horde both went and met the Nightfallen, and it was, we're this mana-addicted people that were struggling to control this mana addiction. The Blood Elves were naturally very sympathetic to it, and hey, hey bro, we know what it's like. We're there for you. We wanna help. Whereas the night elves were very much like, oh, it's another one of you guys, you bunch of drug addicts. This is why we don't get involved with such things. And so I think as a result, the Nightfallen have kind of taken to the blood elves as like, oh, hey, you guys are kind of more like, comrades and brothers and sisters in arms than the other way around.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. The High Mountain Tauren, I guess, is the best way to put it. The Moose people. That totally makes sense on why they're going to the Horde. And what was the Trolls? Yeah, it totally makes sense on why they're going to the Horde. The Void Elves, I'm a little bummed that that's going to the Alliance, but, hey, I'm getting, 6 new character slots or 8 new character slots or something on each realm. So I'll just go ahead and make a Void Elf there. That's fine. I'll have fun with that. The Dwarves totally make sense, and then, of course, the Draenei totally make sense. And, I mean, they are slightly different, model customizations, which is really cool. And hopefully it looks like we are going to be having more, coming in the future, too.
Yeah, I kind of always hoped that we would get a case of... Like, I kind of thought sub-races would come into play, and I think we may have talked about this on the show before, but I always liked the idea of sub-races being a way that they brought new races into other factions. So the idea would be, hey, we've got dwarves that are evil, well, quote-unquote evil, like the Dark Iron dwarves that don't like others, so let's have them be part of the Horde, and then let's have High Elves, which are, kind of the Blood Elves that didn't drink the Kool-Aid. Let's let them be part of the Alliance, and it would be a cool way to split these all up. So, anyway, I think that would have been cool. I think this is a neat idea. I think sub-races are a neat idea.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they open them up later on, that'd be great. I'd love it if my Blood Elf Mage can have blue eyes again.
Alright, cool, Ben. Well, we're going to go ahead and call that an episode right there, unless for some reason we add more. If you hear more of this, then it's all a bonus, and otherwise, we'll check back in with you later with more talk about all this stuff. Bye.
Oh, I don't get to say bye?
Well, I held it up, but you didn't say anything. So you can say bye now.
Bye, everybody.